Hello, BookTube. You know, never let it be said that I don't suffer for my imaginary BookTube friends. You might think that I don't. You might think that suffering is the furthest thing in the world from a sexy influencer who sits on his fainting couch all day, writing and reading and making videos. But I do. I suffer for my imaginary BookTube friends. And I don't think there's a better example of it than today. It is boiling hot in Boston today. 90 degrees. Have mercy, John, please. It's hot as hell in Philadelphia. Or more than 90 degrees. You might be up to 95. And it was that way from the very first. It was hot overnight. It never cooled off. It was a boiling hot Saturday, in other words. And you might say, well, but don't you mention that you have a fan going and a little AC unit in the window, so you aren't suffering from the heat? So what do you mean you're suffering for your imaginary BookTube friends? I'll tell you why. It's because I went out in that heat for you. There's an argument to be made that I went out for myself as well, but I won't hear that. I went out for you, and I'm guilt-tripping you because of it. Because on every other month, the Boston Public Library has a book sale. And since I have recently fallen in love with the Boston Public Library all over again, I've added the library back to my routine. I figured the least I can do to show that love is go to the Boston Public Library book sale, even though I don't need any more books. And even though I knew that by the time I went out onto the subway and on the sidewalks, it would be 95 degrees Fahrenheit. I thought, I don't really want to do that. And then I thought, but I should selflessly do that for my imaginary BookTube friends. And so I did. I suffered buying tons and tons of cheap books. I went through the agony of that for you. And I want to show them to you. No idea how long this video would be because I found a lot of books. Most of them mass market paperbacks. I found 4 books that weren't mass market paperbacks. 4. 3 hardcovers and a larger paperback. So I'll show you those first. The first one is Words in Air. This is a big, wonderful collection of the correspondence of the great poet Elizabeth Bishop and Robert Lowell. And Robert Lowell is on my mind because of, this thing right here. I am deeply, deeply in the weeds of this. This is a new book. This came out in August, or is out soon in August. A collection of the various memoirs and nonfiction jottings of, there's a psychopathic young Robert Lowell. I'm deeply ensconced in this book, wandering through the weeds of its notes and references. So when I saw this, I don't have this volume, and I grabbed it. I've seen this at the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston for $10. Here it was $1, so I grabbed it, and it will be a great adjunct. I will just put it alongside this. FSG is bringing out, or has brought out, virtually everything to do with Robert Lowell. But the big fat volume of his letters has always struck me as so self-serving that I'd much rather read him in correspondence with other people. So I grabbed this thing. That was one of the hardcovers. Let me make a pile here. Another hardcover was something that I've had here forever and ever, and I got rid of it. I mailed it to one of you and found another copy for $1. So I grabbed it. This is Walter Isaacson's beautifully designed biography of Leonardo da Vinci. Big, heavy brick of a thing that is heavy because it's heavy stock paper, so that you can have full-color reproductions of all kinds of things in here, instead of just one inset in the middle. And a fairly good-feeling, heartfelt biography of Leonardo. I've read no shortage of Leonardo da Vinci biographies. I may have read every major one that's ever been written in English. And I didn't find much to fault with this thing. I rather liked it. So when I saw a replacement copy, I grabbed it. Then we have an old favorite of mine, but I've only ever had this thing in trade paperback. I believe that mostly it was only ever sold in trade paperback, and the hardcovers went to libraries. This is an ex-library copy of a hardcover, so I grabbed it. This is by Walter Mule Whitehill, who was forever and ever the head librarian of the Boston Athenaeum, and this is his great book, Boston, A Topographical History. That is right there. This is... see, this was actually from the Boston Public Library. They must have other copies. They would never get rid of their only copy of this. But this is, again, a heavily illustrated history of Boston up to about the time of the Central Artery that was just a decade ago torn down. It was being put up when this book came out. And it takes you from Boston's earliest days all the way up to the mid-century brutalist architecture and all of the massive highway things that were going on, a massive highway that was being put straight through the heart of Boston. And it's great. It is this author never wrote anything that wasn't great. He was a wonderful, gentle, encyclopedic, chatty guy. The face of the Athenaeum for the whole of his tenure there. And for the longest time, Boston, A Topographical History was the book that I would recommend if people said to me, do you have a one-volume history of Boston that you recommend? There have been a couple of later contenders. This is still a great book to get on Boston. Still a fantastic thing to do. So I grabbed it. And then the last full-size thing I got was The Legion of Superheroes. This was it's a brand new graphic novel. The library must never have put this for sale. I mean, must never have added this to their collection. This was just in a donation, and they decided rather than add it to the library, we'll just sell it. And it is the Legion of Superheroes. This is Legion Lost, Volume 1. From, oh God, this must be 10 years ago, maybe more than that. I wonder if I have a date on this. 2012, 10 years ago. When DC decided to relaunch the Legion of Superheroes in 2 ongoing monthly titles. One, the normal Legion of Superheroes, and one, Legion Lost, where a group of Legionnaires, this super team of superpowered teenagers, 1,000 years in the future, get trapped in the 20th century and are presumed dead by their colleagues back in the 31st century. So Legion and Legion Lost came out every month, and I read them, but I have never reread them. I've never gone back to these collections at all. I don't know if this... I know that in Legion Lost, eventually they do run into the Justice League, into Superman. I don't know if that happens in these early issues. Maybe not. Terrific artwork. And there's Wildfire. He was one of the Legionnaires that go back in time. I can't wait to go over this again. And then all the rest of the stuff I got was mass market paperbacks. And in previous Boston library book sales, the vast amount of mass market paperbacks that were out in the boxes on the tables were romance novels. Huge numbers of them. And when I took a glance at the room where the sale was being kept, I greeted the people that I knew. I braced myself for the presence of those odious book dealers with their cell phone apps, just beetling through each book. When I saw all the mass market paperbacks, you could tell at a glance how many of them there were. I thought, boy, that's a lot of romance novels. And I was automatically thinking about old Signet Regency romances that I would love to get. But it turns out there's been a turnover in the library book sale because those mass market paperbacks were almost all vintage science fiction. Or at least maybe not vintage in the sense that collectors would think, that Sean Standfast or Stephen Andrews, the outlaw bookseller, would think, but old science fiction that's 40 or 50 years old. Mass market paperbacks. In other words, the science fiction that I read by the mountain. I read mountains of this stuff. I had 2 local bookstores, and I read everything that they would get for me. And plenty besides. I had used bookstores, and I went straight to the science fiction and fantasy section. I read an enormous amount of these mass market paperbacks. So when I saw that the library book sale was mostly that, I went with the flow. I didn't fight with it at all. And I got a ton of science fiction and a few things that aren't. So if you're not interested in science fiction and fantasy, then the rest of this video won't interest you, except for a handful of things. Like, for instance, this first one. The first one that comes to mind here is an old Bantam classic. I have a bunch of these on my shelf. I like them. I don't know why. I like their design. This is The Bostonians by Henry James. I've never had this particular paperback, but that's the design I'm talking about. So I grabbed it. Go along with those. I'm going to put these off to the side because there is no chance of making a Steve Pyramid with 50 books. There is no chance. Maybe I should do, for those of you who want to dip out early, let me sift through here and get the ones that aren't science fiction. Okay, like this, for instance. Stuart Kaminsky, who was a wonderful, wonderful guy, wrote, this is Toby Peters' mystery, Down for the Count. Toby Peters is a private eye, and I am part of an event that's coming up in September that's all about private eyes. I haven't read a Stuart Kaminsky novel in forever, so I grabbed this, and I grabbed others as well. Yes, well, this is a very much better-known private eye. This is John MacDonald. This is The Girl in the Plain Brown Wrapper. This is a Travis McGee novel. And Travis McGee is, despite all of his other trappings, a private eye. Basically, he's a private investigator. So this will go along with that. Reading a few Travis McGee's for Dick Timber in September will be fine by me. Then a murder mystery that isn't a private eye. I don't think this is a private eye. I'm pretty sure there's an inspector in here. If I know this series correctly, I think Scotland Yard is involved. This is Martha Grimes. This is The Deer Leap. I absolutely love this particular Mysterious Press. Is that, no, Dell. Run of her books with this cover art. I only saw this example at the library book sale, but I love this cover artwork to the exclusion of all the rest of the cover designs that her books have had. Richard Jury, I think, is the name of her Scotland Yard detective. And I want all of these mass market paperbacks. I went looking for them today, box by box, and didn't find them. Didn't find any but that one. Then another Private Eye, although again, we would maybe be hesitant to call him that. Do you call Nero Wolfe a private eye? He's a private investigator. Just because he doesn't bed the ladies and run around on docks and punch guys, in warehouses, doesn't mean he's not a private eye. I found N4 to Go by Rex Stout, a Nero Wolfe story. With a nice cover design. I haven't read a Nero Wolfe in forever and ever. Those will go along well with Dick Timber. And also this. Another great guy, like Stuart Kaminsky, just an old Bailey hack of a writer. This is William Tapley, and this is his character Brady Coyne, and this is A Void in Hearts. A murder mystery, again, about a private eye, a small-time private eye, Les Katz, is hired by a woman to get the dirt on her husband. He digs up the dirt all right, explicit photos of hubby with another woman, but instead of taking him back to his client, Katz sells him to her husband. And now he wants his pal Brady Coyne to give him some legal advice. What should he do? Oh, that's right. Brady Coyne is a detective. He's not a private eye. So this won't work for Dick Timber, but it will work for March Mystery Madness. I haven't read a Brady Coyne mystery in so long, and they're so enjoyable. So that was, believe it or not, it. That is it for the stuff that is not science fiction or fantasy. So if you're not interested in science fiction or fantasy, now would be the time to go. Because all the rest of these things I got. Now, some of them weren't... there was one I heard. Wait, there's one other. And I got this purely because of it's a UK mass market paperback. I've never seen it before. That's the only reason that I got it. This is Lake Wobegon Days by Garrison Keillor, which for some reason has a cover in which a pickup truck is driving through the desert salt flats of Utah, when this story takes place in Minnesota. This is a famous novel that takes place in a fictional town called Lake Wobegon. It's a collection of vignettes. There's not really one plot line that unites all of these stories, but some of them are just so delightful. The original, I can't speak unqualified praise of all the Lake Wobegon sequels. Or anything else that this author has written, but Lake Wobegon Days is a classic. Of a minor note, but a classic. And I'd never seen this before. As soon as I saw it, I thought, well, do you really love it enough, Minnesota fiction, to have 2 copies? And I realized I don't have the classic American hardcover of Lake Wobegon Days. I'm sure it will turn up at the Brattle, and I will get it. But for instance, let me check. That original American edition is gently, sweetly illustrated. Will those illustrations be in the UK edition? Yes, they are. Okay. All right, great. Well, then maybe this isn't any different from the American version. I still want the American version, but I couldn't pass up this. I have a thing for UK paperbacks, so I got that. And that is, positively speaking, the last thing that is not science fiction and fantasy. So we'll just move on from there. I found a fairly new-ish paperback version of Neuromancer by William Gibson, one of the foundational novels of so-called cyberpunk, and a terrific book. Gibson is a really good stylist of prose. I don't have a copy of this book at all. I don't think I even have an e-copy. So I grabbed it. Then Fritz Leiber. The other day at the Brattle Bookshop, I found a bunch of Farford and Gray Mouser books, and the one I didn't find was Swords and Ice Magic, and I found that. I found it at the Boston Public Library book sale, so now I have a whole set of those in mass market. I found Roger Zelazny, who not an author I particularly like, but I didn't think I would ever see these paperbacks again. I remember these paperbacks. When did this come out? These were probably all from the same time. 1979. I bought this when it came out. 1979. I paid $2.25 for it. Read it. Didn't all that much love it. Gladly will I read it again. This is Road Marks by Roger Zelazny with a classic cover. And since these were the money was all going to a good cause, and since a lot of these were nostalgia buys anyway, I admit I got a lot of them for the cover. Is there another example? Well, for instance, this is book 3 of the Journeys of McGill Fayen by Kevin O'Donnell, about our main character who can teleport. He has the ability, he's a mutant with the ability to teleport himself and other things. and each novel is an adventure of his. This was not as long running a series as I would like. There were only 4 books in the series, but they are great. And this is in perfect condition, better condition than any of my copies of this are. I grab McGill-Fayen whenever I find it because they're so good to reread. I had all 4 of the McGill-Fayen books with the original cover artwork in that Nook library that vanished on me. So I need to find those again. I didn't find any of the others. Then I found a science fiction author that he's never done anything for me, but I'm going to try him again. Absolutely. This is Jerry Pournelle, and this is his book Birth of Fire, which I don't think I've ever read. The tag on the front is Mars needs mercenaries. Mars needs Garrett Pitson. Okay, I suppose they need him particularly. Who knows what this will be like? This came out in 1976, and Jerry Pournelle sort of prided himself on being a sort of a knowledgeable in the science part of science fiction. So who knows what the Mars will be like in this novel? I'm pretty sure I've never read it. Will it be the Mars that we know exists and that we knew pretty well existed in 1976, or will it not be? Will it be some sort of fantasy land? No idea. This next one was a rebuy. It's in perfect condition, better condition again than any of the copies that I have. This is the best of Cordwainer Smith. This old paperback that I think was the best-selling thing. Del Rey used to do a best-of series. Robert Bloch, James Blish, everybody, you name it, and they had a copy in this series. But I think the best of Cordwainer Smith was their best-selling book in that series. It's through this book, this paperback, which came out, are you going to tell me? 1975, that I became aware of Cordwainer Smith and just ate it up and then read everything else that I could find. So when I found this has all of his classic stories, Mother Hittens, Little Kittens, Alpha Ralpha Boulevard, Scanners Live in Vain. It has all of his classics. So when I saw it in perfect condition, at the library sale, I got it. Then we have an author I've never heard of. I don't know anything about this author, but it's a Timescape book. For a while, you had books with the Timescape logo and cover design, and there must have been a good editorial team connected with the Timescape books because a lot of them were really good. To the point where if something was a Timescape book, you could kind of count on it being good and buy it because of that. I know of virtually nothing like that today. But this is At the Eye of the Ocean by Hilbert Schenk. Somewhere in time lies a terrible and perfect truth. Lovely cover here, a Timescape book. That's what I mean. Had that up there. Abel Roon learned early of his fantastic powers. His uncanny ability to sense the states of the ocean, anticipates its currents and change, read its most violent and treacherous moods. As a young shepherd on the blustery shores of Cape Cod, good Lord, shepherd, when does this take place? It was the waters that spoke to him, the tides that beckoned him, whispered sea creatures that talked to him secret languages. Okay. Well, I didn't know this was a Cape Cod book, but all the better. I've never read this. I don't think I ever have. And this comes from a time when, is this the late 70s, early 80s? Is that when this is? 1981. Yeah, this comes from a time when there were lots of Timescape books. I must have missed this one. I don't think I ever read it. What else have we got here? Oh, well, I found a book that's the third in the series. I don't know how much sense it's going to make to me. This is the third book in the Paratwa saga. It's called The Paratwa. And it's by Christopher Hintz, an author I don't think I know. I'm not quite sure what drew me to the cover. but I grabbed it because all these things, I think the paperbacks were 50 cents. So I grabbed it, and maybe book 3 in a series will make sense. Maybe it won't. This next one is a minor classic from a classic author that I don't know that I've ever read this. The author is Fletcher Pratt, the author of The Well of the Unicorn. And this is his book, The Blue Star. With, I believe, a Darrell K. Sweet cover. I don't think I've ever read this. So, Lalette Asterhax could not escape her destiny. She was a hereditary witch in a world where witchcraft was banned by ecclesiastical and temporal powers, and any man who possessed her would then gain possession of her precious blue star and all the powers it could bestow. Rodvard Bergelin was a reluctant revolutionary, a rogue who had a date with destiny. Although he lusted after a rich baron's daughter, Rodvard was ordered to seduce the saucy witch maiden. And I guess he gets his hands on that blue gem. I don't recall ever having read this, so we'll give it a try. Then an author I know, haven't read her in a while. I would never expecting to find. This is another Timescape book. Was never expecting to find it. So I grabbed it. I think this is also a sequel. This is The Black Beast. And I think that is a sequel to... is it going to tell me the other books in the series? Oh, yeah. Okay. The Black Beast, The Book of Suns, The Sable Moon, The Silver Sun, and The White Heart. I remember reading and loving The White Heart. I think I read all the other books in the series. It's possible that this is the first book. No, first The White Heart, then The Silver Sun, now The Black Beast. So this is also book 3 in a series. I seem to remember Nancy Springer not being really good at bringing the reader up to speed, so I'm not worried that I won't know what else is going on here. And I don't think I saw any other Nancy Springer. It's odd that that person would have got rid of just this one. This is high fantasy, though. It's got a unicorn on the cover. That's usually the kiss of death, but I'll give it a try. Then we have an old Daw paperback. This is the Book of Brian Aldiss, a science fiction author that I have always been deeply impressed by, but never actually loved. And this has a whole bunch of signature shorter work. This also was a series. Daw did a series of the Book of so-and-so and so-and-so, Stanislaw Lem or Frank Herbert or whatnot, and this is also part of that series. What does this have in it? Comic Inferno, The Underprivileged, Cardiac Arrest, In the Arena, All the World's Tears. I won't know these well enough, so I'm glad I found this. This is an author I want to get to know better. And then we have a Penguin mass market paperback of yet more Penguin science fiction, which is edited by Brian Aldiss. And he might have edited the work, but he certainly didn't stop that title. Can you imagine such a title? The title makes you hear a weary sigh. That is not a good idea for a title of a book. Yet more Penguin science fiction. God almighty. But who's in here? Is Brian Aldiss the kind of Ponzi editor that puts himself in his own collection? Theodore Cogswell is in here. Oh my God, I haven't read a Theodore Cogswell story in so long. Oh my God. Arthur C. Clarke. Walter Miller Jr., I Made You. Damon Knight is in here. C.M. Kornbluth is in here. William Tenn is in here. There was a ton of William Tenn at the library books. I left it all behind. Maybe I shouldn't have. I read a ton of William Tenn 50 years ago and didn't like any of it. So I just left it behind. The Windows of Heaven is here by John Brunner. Fantastic. Common Time, James Blish is in here. I read Common Time a long time ago. I'll give it another try because people do seem to like James Blish a lot more than I do. And Fulfillment by A.E. Van Vogt. So Brian Aldiss does not put himself in his own anthology. That's great. That's fantastic. And I'm always up for a science fiction anthology. I don't think this one will live past the one read-through, but I'm always up for it. Then what else have we got here? Oh, okay. I got this one suspecting that it might be garbage, just in time for Garb August. I'm always up. I was on the lookout for garbage once I saw how many mass market paperbacks there were. This is by George H. Smith, and it's called The Island Snatchers. It certainly has a garbage cover. Really good, but a trashy cover. I don't think this is the George H. Smith that I have read. I have read a number of books by an author named George H. Smith, who was a very eloquent and outspoken atheist. I don't think this is that author. I'd find it hard to believe that George Smith, who was so serious, moonlighted as a Daw science fiction author. I would find that hard to believe. I don't know if does this have like an author bio in it? A lot of times these older mass market paperbacks don't. No, this doesn't have any kind of biography, so I don't know. I don't think it's possible that this is the George Smith that I know. Well, I've never seen this book before, and Daw paperbacks are always fun. Another candidate for possible trash was we made a list for Garb August, the trash event I'm alluding to. The hosts of Garb August and myself, we've been batting around ideas as to what will be a tip-off that something that they're about to read is trash. And I don't think we ever actually included on our list something that maybe we should have, maybe we did, and I'm just forgetting. But another thing that maybe is a tip-off that a book you're about to read is trash does have an exclamation point in the title. Maybe we did cover that on our list, but this one does. This is The Vikings. This is by Neil Langholm, and this one is called The Dark Return. And I'm assuming that if The Vikings is up along the side here, that there were a number of Viking books. I'm assuming that's the case. So this isn't just one of a kind. I wonder, are you going to tell me? Oh, okay. Well, The Dark Return is listed as number 2 in the series, number 1 being Blood Sacrifice. So there were at least two that were in this series, and it will be just swashbuckling adventures of Vikings. I'm up for that. Depending on the high quotient of swashbuckling, the higher the swashbuckling, generally speaking, Robert Louis Stevenson accepted, the more likely it is that the thing is trash. Then these next two things, I'm not saying these are trash. I'm not going to call that kind of trouble. But I grabbed them because I have one big hardcover and nothing else. And these are George R. R. Martin. These are A Song of Ice and Fire. I found A Feast for Crows and a mass market paperback of Dance with Dragons, which I found a big hardcover of just recently. So now I have two of these. These are born to be mass market paperbacks. I now have two of them in mass market paperback. That's good enough for me. Let's see. What else have we got here? Oh, okay. The author Julian May wrote the Pliocene Exile series of books that I have praised. I've talked about them on this channel many, many times. The Pliocene Exile books took place in the Pliocene epoch, millions of years ago on Earth, where a bunch of people from the 22nd century, a bunch of humans from Earth in the 22nd century, where a whole bunch of psychic powers are now in possession of a large percentage of the population. A group of that future population goes to the past, to Earth's past millions of years ago. And they have adventures in the Pliocene epoch. And it's wonderful. I love those books, just love them. But they were successful for Julian May. And Julian May also wanted to tell stories set in the larger world of the future. In other words, stories set in the interplanetary polity that aren't part of Earth millions of years ago. And this is book 2 in the Galactic Milieu trilogy. I have, I think, book 1 or maybe book 3. I want all of these, and I want everything else connected with this series. I want to give it all a grand reread. This is Diamond Mask. Book 2 in the Galactic Milieu. So is Jack the Bodiless Volume 1? Yes, Jack the Bodiless is Volume 1, which means the only one I'm missing is Magnificat. That was the third one in the series. But I've already read them, and I really enjoyed them. And I also found, much to my delight, The Pliocene Companion by Julian May, which is not a novel. Instead, it's a guidebook to the Pliocene Exile books. I love these kinds of things, whether it's Barsoom or the Dune Encyclopedia or whatever. I love companion volumes to long-running series. You always get tidbits that you don't get in the books. The authors almost always revisit some of their core concepts. Will have everything not only on the alien races that the humans meet when they go to the ancient Earth, but also on the metaphysical powers that the humans have in the present day, and what the Galactic Milieu is like itself, up until the point when this book came out, which would have been, I'm guessing, the 1980s, 1984. I haven't seen or thumbed my way through the Pliocene Companion volume in forever, probably since 1984. So I was overjoyed to find it at the library today. We're almost done, don't worry. The next one is by Hope Mirrlees, an odd character, an odd figure in literature, who accidentally wrote a foundational book of high fantasy. It's Lud in the Mist. I had never seen this paperback. This is Valentine? No, Del Rey. This is Del Rey. I've never seen this book, this cover before. I read this in a hardcover from an old library a long time ago. This is a very old book. This came out in, you're going to tell me? You might not tell me. Okay, this says 1970. Maybe that's this edition. Oh, goodness gracious. Oh, no, wait. Isn't that the thing that authors do when they sign a book? They strike out their name and sign it? Oh, well, then this looks like it was signed in 2009. Okay, well, I don't know enough about this author to speak on the provenance of the book, but this is high fantasy, about a village that encounters a parallel society in fairyland that they didn't know really existed and don't really want to admit exists. I read this a long time ago. This is a weird foundational fantasy novel of a type that people tend not to remember. People tend not to remember Evangeline Walton. They tend not to know about Lord Dunsany. They tend not to know about Silverlock. And they don't remember Lud in the Mist. It doesn't usually come up on lists. So the fact that I could find it in an old Del Rey paperback, fantastic. I don't know how well it sold for them or what kind of a job it did. And then the last one is also a Del Rey paperback. I was not going to pass this up. This is a Darrell K. Sweet cover. And this came up, I think Michael K. Vaughan just recently did a video in which he held up an Alan Dean Foster novel. He held up a couple. Ice Rigger, I think, was one of them. But one of the Alan Dean Foster novels that he held up was a Pip and Flinks novel. And I got the distinct impression when he was talking about it that he's never heard of Pip and Flinks. Or read any Pip and Flinks novels. They were a duo. Pip and Flinks were a young boy and his dragon, a sort of a cat-sized but very powerful dragon. And they were a hit with Alan Dean Foster's fans. He wrote an original Pip and Flinks adventure. I think it was the Tar M. Kang or something like that. I ignored it. I didn't know what it was. I came to Pip and Flinks later, and Alan Dean Foster kept writing stories about them for a long time, and he bounced around in their chronology. He didn't just say, and next, and next, and next. And I found Orphan Star, which is, I think, the second or maybe the third Pip and Flinks adventure. I remember reading this and loving it when it came out. I wonder if this will tell me. The Tar M. Krang was the first Pip and Flinks adventure. I think Blood Hype might have been the second one. No, this is the sequel to the Tar M. Krang. So this is the second one. This is the second book. And I don't have any of the others. When I saw this, I looked feverishly for others. Not just Pip and Flinks novels, but any older Alan Dean Foster. Nor Crystal Tears, For Love of Mother Not, Ice Rigger, I would have taken any of them. This is the only one that I found, and I grabbed it. The idea of revisiting Pip and Flinks would be so nice. That would be so nice. A lot of these will be revisits, but a lot of them won't be. And that was my Boston Public Library book sale. I consider it an unqualified success, even though I was in seventh heaven when I was pouring through these boxes, and there were only two dealers there, and they were being fairly well behaved. No one was shoving, no one was pushing, no one was being rude, no one was simply blocking a shelf in order to stand there and read. Nothing like that. It was a perfectly well-behaved crowd. And I was in seventh heaven just pouring through these things and thinking, how much can I carry? That's all I thought about. I didn't think about price. I thought, how much can I carry? It was only once I left the library with my bag of goodies that I remembered how much I was sacrificing for my imaginary booktube friends. Because when I got outside, it was like 20 degrees hotter than when I went in. 20 degrees hotter. 20. It was horrible, baby. It was. It was horrible. It was horrible. The trip back here was a nightmare of Brobdingnagian proportions. Because of you. You're responsible for that. So, you need to call in store credit at the Brattle. No, you don't. I suffered, but I had a blast. And it felt like I needed to do this in order to seal the deal, in order to put a ring on my new association with the Boston Public Library. The only sad, melancholy aspect of the whole thing is that there was a great guy who used to mastermind the library book sale, and he died just recently. He died before he could get to this sale. Or he would have come no matter how bad he felt. And stood there and carny barkered in the middle of the room, telling people, oh, it's so great to have you all here. Books really broaden the mind. Buy 10, buy 20. I used to cringe at how cringy I thought a lot of those comments were. And today, when I was poring over those books, all I could think was, I'd give anything. I'd give a digit off my hand to hear him say that again. That was the only melancholy part, but boy, oh boy, he had a blast while he was around. So it's hard, aside from the momentary sting of him not being around, it's certainly not a life that was poorly lived. So, there was a guy there today who was trying to do that, and he was so afraid. He was obviously an introvert. He was trying to address the crowd, but he wasn't doing a good job. I felt so tempted to just walk up to him and quietly say, if you don't mind, I'd be happy to do this. I'm not a member of the organization that puts on the sale, but I'd be happy to do this. I'll do it while I'm here, and then you're on your own when I leave. But I spent a delightful half hour at the sale, and then suffered the tortures of the damned to get back here, and I'm not going anywhere in this heat until the heat breaks. The heat is supposed to break on Tuesday. I'm not doing anything until then. Tiny walks with my bee. We're not going on marathon walks because if she's panting in air conditioning, imagine what she's like outside with a tight fur coat on her. But anyway, that was the Boston Public Library book sale for August of 2022. The next one is October. It's every even-numbered month. So it'll be the first weekend of October. Will be the next Boston Public Library book sale. You can bet that I will be there. So I will give you a report then. But in the meantime, I have a ton of science fiction now calling to me for the weekend. For the weekend's reading that already has a lot of books on the docket. I'm going to have to move things around or maybe just do 10 times more reading than I usually do. Since I'm going to be hunkered down in the heat anyway, maybe so. But anyway, that was my Boston Public Library book sale. I will wrap this up on this has gone quite long enough, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.